Who would win in a fight between North America and South America? Let's find out. So, for this video, we're working with a detailed map of the American continent, running all the way from north to south, packed with mountain ranges, jungles, and coastlines. On it, we're dropping a group of 6 humans in North America and another 6 down in South America. Then we hit play and let them carefully explore their surroundings, testing the ground, gathering the basics, and laying down the very first foundations of their new lives. Pretty quickly, they're setting up campfires to make it through the night, and within just a few months, they've already pitched their first tents. Little clusters start to form, marking the birth of both civilizations. Once both kingdoms are up and running, we'll give them proper names so we can keep track of them more easily as the experiment goes on. Fast forward about 20 years, and you can already see clear signs of progress in the North American kingdom. They've got a palace for their king, a sturdier, reinforced building that really stands out from the rest, plus several upgraded cabins and a mill for growing and processing their food. Down south, things are playing out a little differently. Sure, they've built more houses than their northern neighbors, but they still don't have a palace for their king. By the way, I actually spot him helping out with road construction, which is a good sign for the future of the kingdom. It means he's getting his hands dirty, instead of just sitting back and giving orders. They do have a mill, but it's smaller than the one up north. It looks like they've only just finished building it, and they're just now starting to plow the fields around it. Speaking of the North Americans, they've chosen Gralfer as their king. He's got the greedy trait, and get this, he's in love. We don't know exactly with whom, but still, that mix could shape the kingdom's entire strategy, pushing them to stockpile resources while also making choices fueled by his romantic side. Meanwhile, in South America, the throne is held by Aunt Fanina, who has the lustful trait. For now, that doesn't seem to be getting in the way of daily work, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Then, around year 60, the South starts stepping up big time. They've built a port, and a few ships are already cruising along the coast. On top of that, they've put up a palace and opened a mine, using its materials to reinforce the foundations of their homes. That extra strength should help them stand up to the weather and any possible attacks. The port also means fishing and maritime trade are now on the table, which is definitely going to speed up their growth. And not just that, on top of everything we've already mentioned, they've got a second town and several siege towers, showing a clear focus on defending their kingdom. However, when we head back to North America, I realize the gap in infrastructure quality is even bigger than I expected. Not only are all their houses fully upgraded, including the palace, but they've also built a training barracks to produce soldiers far more efficiently. In fact, you can already see some troops mixed in with the civilians, patrolling the streets and keeping order. What's interesting is that, unlike South America, they haven't founded any additional towns. They're sticking together in the capital for now. At least so far, that centralization helps with control, but it does hold back expansion. We'll see if that changes in the future. Now we're at year 100, and believe it or not, South America has pulled ahead of North America in terms of population. They've built several more houses and have just started upgrading their homes, covering them in concrete and cement. This shows that, while they were behind in residential infrastructure, they're slowly catching up. They've also founded another new town, further expanding their influence in the region. As for North America, they've stayed consistent with the same approach they've had from the start, prioritizing quality over quantity. They've even built a library, which will help them write more and better books, passing knowledge down to future generations. That kind of investment in culture and education often pays off with better long-term decision-making. Finally, North America manages to establish a second settlement to the northwest, which could eventually give them access to Alaska and allow them to encircle the north of Canada. For now, they're mostly settled within the territory that would be the United States, taking up nearly the whole area plus a large portion of Mexico. South America, on the other hand, still has some open land in southern Argentina and Chile, along with plenty of unoccupied territory in the northern part of the region, especially in areas that would correspond to Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and the rest of the countries that make up South America. I just realized that the only land passage between the two regions is the narrow strip of Central America. That corridor could turn into a full-on battlefield the moment war breaks out. It's also possible that before the conflict even begins, some settler from North America might cross into southern lands to take advantage of the proximity, or the other way around. Whoever manages to cross first could set up a strategic outpost for the future. As for the rulers, it's pretty remarkable that the South American monarch is still alive at the age of 120. That said, when it comes to equipment, he's not all that well protected. It seems his longevity has more to do with the fact that his favorite food is herbs, and And by the way, I just realized she's not actually a king, but a queen. That detail doesn't really change anything in the grand scheme of things, but at least now we're not assuming her gender. Over in North America, the original king is no longer with us. In his place, we now have Queen Bella, who's much better equipped than the South American queen. She doesn't seem to be part of the original royal bloodline since the former king doesn't show up among her ancestors, which suggests the kingdom may have gone for a more open succession, or even a democratic election. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed they weren't able to hold on to their second settlement and ended up abandoning it. Still, they bounced back quickly and set up a new one in the northeast, aiming for a location that's more sustainable and better connected. We've reached year 300, and in terms of overall population, both kingdoms are pretty much neck and neck. The difference lies in the military side of things, and here, South America has a clear edge. They've spent the last few centuries working hard to build multiple training barracks, marketplaces that boost internal trade, and other structures that speed up both technological and military development. And not only that, they actually managed to secure a new settlement on North American soil. That seemed impossible at first, but they pulled it off. Still, I doubt this small town will have any real impact in the middle of such a vast enemy territory. I decided to check the charts for the last few centuries, and I noticed something interesting. In North America, there was a sudden population boom in the last 100 years. That spike came with a rise in homelessness, a classic social cost when expansion outpaces the ability to integrate all the new inhabitants. South America, on the other hand, grew at a steadier pace, but they're not free from the problem either. They're almost at the same level as North America in that regard. In other words, both are paying a price for their growth, just at different speeds. After a long wait, we finally arrive at year 500. This is when North America decides to declare war on South America. The first strike is aimed at the territory South America held up north, while the bulk of the Southern Army pushes through the narrow strip of Central America, clashing head-on with North American troops. At first, the South Americans go all in, concentrating most of their forces in the center. When it looks like the North Americans are getting completely overrun, I start spotting units with firearms moving toward the front. That single detail completely changes the flow of battle. It makes defense much easier, and after a while of intense fighting, they manage to wipe out the invaders in that area. Still, South America doesn't give up, and eventually brings the same technological upgrades to the field. The problem is, they arrive a little too late, and the North Americans, already more familiar with these weapons, prove to be far more skilled in using them. The consequences for South America are brutal. By this point, they've already lost about half of their population. Even so, in terms of sheer military numbers, they still outnumber North America, but they're running out of crucial resources. You can clearly see the shortage of proper military gear. Even a small group of North American troops left behind enemy lines is able to cause massive damage and heavy casualties, simply because so many South American soldiers have nothing to properly defend themselves with. There are attempts to counterattack, but getting close is almost impossible. Fear of being wiped out in seconds takes over, and the soldiers prefer to keep their distance. To make matters worse, more reinforcements arrive from the north. Dozens of incredibly well-equipped soldiers land, and survival in South America becomes nearly impossible. One city after another falls. First, the North Americans take control of all of northern South America, and with the front secured, they begin preparing for the final push south. Down there are hardly any soldiers left. Most of the people are civilians and children who have fled the war, taking shelter in the last remaining settlements. From the coast, ships back up the operation, destroying siege towers and clearing the way for ground troops. South America's defensive line collapses completely, and the North Americans sweep through what little was left, ultimately conquering the entire continent. With that, North America stands as the sole continental superpower.